Welcome, everybody out there. This is Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. Today, this is episode 1 with my guest, Eric Virgo. Say hi, Eric.
Well, hi everyone. It's great to be here.
Before we get to your passion and preposterous peeve, you mind if I ask you some questions so the audience can get to know you a little bit better?
Oh yeah, man, that's what I'm here for.
All right. So, what movie will you never skip when channel surfing?
Oh, Con Air, definitely.
You got to put the money back in the box. Am I right?
Oh, jeez, it's been a long time since I've seen that movie, but yeah, I actually might just download it and watch it.
All right. So, growing up, what was your favorite book that you believe should be made into a movie?
Favorite book that I believe should be made into a movie. I wasn't a huge reader as a kid. I think I would have to say the Harry Potter series, but I'm pretty sure they already made that into movies, actually.
Yeah, I feel that way too. I'm not sure though. I'll have to do some checking up on that. So, in your opinion, what is the best meal on a rainy day?
Best rainy day meal. I like a good like chicken noodle soup. I know that's like a pretty boring answer, but just something that's warm. You can hold it in your hands.
It's good for the soul.
Good for the soul. Yeah. Yeah, that's another book that they can make into a movie.
So, in your opinion, what is the most overrated restaurant, chain or otherwise?
Oh, most overrated? Whataburger, which is like a big chain down in Texas, which is where I currently live. And people go crazy for Whataburger. And it's like a high-end like fast food chain, but it's not that good. It's fine. But people go nuts for it, and I don't understand why.
You've tried it at least, though.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess you can have an opinion on something without trying it, but yeah, I've tried it a number of times now, and it's not great.
What do you regret not having done before you graduated high school?
Oh wow.
Is it a girl you didn't ask out, a sport you didn't try, an audition you didn't decide to, try out for like the school play, or?
Yeah, I definitely spent like zero time trying to date people in high school, and I think that's definitely a regret. I was obviously like too chicken shit to ask a girl out properly, and that was probably a mistake.
Was it that you were just too busy, or was it actually that, it was too scary?
Oh, it was definitely because it was too scary. I mean, it's just high school for most people is like everyone is really self-conscious and all those things, and I was definitely in that camp.
Totally. So if you could guarantee one of your dreams would come true, which one would it be?
I would say having enough money to live my life in a way that I want to, and I don't have to stress about like making money to sustain myself anymore.
That does sound worth accomplishing.
Oh yeah.
So, what do you wish you had started sooner that you currently do or have done?
I've spent the last couple of years of my life trying to focus on relationships with people, and I've found that to be incredibly rewarding. Just because I feel like obtaining things and obtaining goals is something that I'm able to do. But I've found like making connections with people to be a lot more rewarding. And I wish I had started doing that sooner.
When you say with people, are you talking about like significant others, or is that like including like making friendships?
It's I would say all encompassing. So significant others, family, friends, like working relationships, all these sorts of things. Yeah, it's just it's something that I don't think I spent enough time or energy on previously, and now that I've started to do it, it's one, paying dividends for me personally, but it's also like a really emotionally fulfilling experience.
So before, what did you spend all your time? What did you spend the time and the energy on that you have since switched that? Was it something that was like temporal, that like school that, you've graduated and moved on and you're doing something else now? Or was it, just something you decided to like leave behind that wasn't worth it?
I would say it was a good mix of things. I know like through my high school years and definitely a lot of my college years, I was very inward looking in the sense that I was just trying to do things that brought me both like temporary and long term satisfaction, but very few to none of them involved doing things with other people in the sense that like I didn't have any like long term committed relationships with like a significant other, and then all of my hobbies and like activities that I would do recreationally were very solo, and I think that was good for me because I learned a lot about myself, and I developed skill sets that one were like soft skill sets and ones that were more marketable in the sense that like I do some of them for my job now, but ultimately I think that you get a lot more out of life when you're able to interact with and connect with other people. So yeah, like that's sort of what I'm talking about.
That's very fascinating. So that's something you wish you started sooner, but it sounds like you've ended some things to start making all those time for relationships. What do you wish you had ended sooner?
I think one of the big story arcs of my life is that like I've dealt with mental health issues, and like depression being the big one. And for a long time, I think I did not really admit to myself that I had a problem in like a clinical sense. And honestly, like for people who have dealt with that before, it is very, very difficult and sort of all encompassing in the sense that like it affects, basically every area of your life. And when I sort of finally admitted to myself that it was like a real problem, I'd say like on a systemic level for me, and then started making the effort to properly deal with it, my life got a lot better. So, to answer your question explicitly, I wish I had ended that sooner in my life because there was nothing stopping me from doing it, or nothing stopping me from stopping it other than just admitting it was a problem and dealing with it.
So, to kind of more concisely put it and make sure I'm understanding you, you wish you had ended like the kind of side glances and not paying attention to mental health issues, and kind of just admitting and accepting and just kind of like stopping the lie that you had convinced yourself that you were fine, that there was like nothing wrong, and that this was like normal. So am I kind of understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I'd say that sounds about right. Maybe the most pithy way to say it is I wish I had stopped lying to myself about it sooner.
And what do you think the first big step in that venue like made the biggest difference? Like, what was the first big thing that like you really like it made impression, or like first big foot forward in that change of direction?
Oh, like the first thing that did that actually started to help.
Yeah, that you noticed that you did that one thing after okay, I'm not gonna lie to myself anymore. I do need help. This is okay. What was the first step you took where you were just like, oh shit, holy crap, this I was right, affirming of that ending of the lie?
Yeah, so I really remember the specific scenario. When I was in college, everyone has to take an intro to psych class, and there was a mental health component of the class, and as a sort of like a precursor to that section, the professor was like, look, one of the things that's very common for people to do as we're going through this section is like they read about all like these mental health disorders and they totally convince themselves that they have it, even though they don't. And I was like, okay. And we talked about a bunch of different mental health issues, and I was like, yeah, that doesn't sound like me at all. Which I think is, probably something a lot of people do, is like they read about these things and like, hey, am I like that? And I was, I quite confidently said no. And then we started talking about clinical depression, and I was like, man, that really sounds like me. And because I was able to like be very confident and I guess true to myself that all of the other ones were definitely not me, but that one really did feel like it mapped to like my life pretty well. I was like, okay, this is definitely something that I need to think more about. And then the first thing that I did as a response is I went and I sought out therapy. And that's definitely, I would say, an extremely effective tool for dealing with it. And it helped enormously.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of one of those amazing things when you hear I totally understand like both sides of that, of the like the hearing like, oh yeah, that's totally me, and the like, oh no, there's no way that's me. It's really awesome that you're able to kind of see through the clutter and the, you know, the ego of, you know, seeing something that either looks one way or the other and finding the truth.
Yeah.
It's really awesome to hear that you're able to do that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I was really fortunate in the sense that, you know, I was able to make that distinction because I think a lot of people struggle with that, and you know, and in a lot of ways, I feel like I got lucky that I was given the opportunity to be presented with that sort of information in like a structured way where it's like, you know, immediately obvious to me. Like it happened like literally in a classroom setting, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Not only that, but structured way, you were able to be taking that class. You were of the mindset that day that you were open to, you know, potentially damaging information and life-altering information. You weren't, you know, if you took that class, that specific day, and you were just, you know, having a shitty day or having too good of a day, if you will, like you're either too high or too low on life, you might have seen that differently. Also, it's like kind of, you know, one of those like kind of fascinating things of when eye-opening things happen to us, right? Is that, you know, it can come at the wrong time where, you know, you
Totally.
don't see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like just like you're saying, like, you know, it's totally possible that like some like micro state that I was in that day would be slightly different, and I don't take the information the same way. I'm not as open to it, that sort of thing. You know, but the other thing is that like, you know, that happened when I was in my early 20s. I certainly don't remember the exact age, but I think for a lot of people who deal with those sort of issues, they just they don't have the ability to be introspective enough because they're just too young. Like you're not like most people haven't developed the tools to be able to almost like step outside themselves and look at their life. It's just, I know for me, you know, it's taken a really, really long time to like develop that skill set and like try to be as objective as possible about it. And I'm certainly not perfect at it yet, but you know, everybody's a work in progress, right?
Oh, absolutely. So this kind of ties in to what you're talking about when it comes to, you know, clinical depression and the way we kind of get out of it. If you could go back in time and tell yourself one sentence, what would it be? And at what age would you be telling yourself this, do you think?
I think I would go back to like when I was a teenager, and I would tell myself that the things that I'm going through are normal, and it's not like a unique experience, and that the things that I'm feeling are valid. That's definitely not one sentence, but I think that's
a really
what I would try
long
and tell
run-on
myself.
sentence. You might really want to retake your English classes before you go back in time.
Oh,
I'm just
I went to school for engineering. I don't claim that I know how to write sentences at all.
I can build you a truck, but I can't construct a paragraph.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So, since you brought up engineering, if you could work any of the jobs over the course of your life, which one do you think it would be? Is the engineering jobs you have now, you know, was it working at Whataburger when you were, you know, 17?
I actually really enjoy my job right now. And I think
Which is what?
If I had the choice, that's what I would do. So I work for Apple, and my job is called product design. And the way that I like to describe it to people is I basically do like basement to roof engineering on the hardware products that we sell our customers. And I specifically work on Macs. So, we do stuff like decide and work with our industrial design team on like the size, shape, weight of a product, all the way down to extremely detail oriented stuff like how many threads a screw has. And we go like extremely wide and extremely deep on a lot of different things.
Well, is it fair to assume, with all the policies that we've heard, that the general public has heard about Apple, that that's basically all you can tell us about what you do?
Yeah, that's basically it. Like under extremely strict NDA for talking about specifics, but I can talk about some products that I had worked on in the past and what I did on them. I had worked on the 2016 MacBook Pros, and I designed a bunch of the computer internals, so like the logic board on those, or on one system there.
So you're the son of a bitch that I should be angry at, that my MacBook broke down last year?
That's
all right. That checks out. Cool. Well, this podcast's over.
Yeah.
Well, before we throw it to our first commercial break, what song, if you could make sure everybody that was listening to this podcast kind of got recommended or should go listen to, what song would you recommend?
All right. So there are the three kings of the blues: Freddie King, B.B. King, and Albert King. And Freddie King is one of my all-time favorite artists. And he has this album called Going Down at Uncle Poe's, which is like this, honestly, like not super well recorded live concert. And he has a version of Let the Good Times Roll on that album. And that's one of my go-to songs for like trying to introduce people to like blues and blues adjacent music, because it's like upbeat. It's a song that has like a really good groove behind it, and honestly, when I listen to it, it's like just very, very uplifting. And I think it sounds great, and that's the song I always point people to and say like, hey, you should check this out and see what you think.
Awesome. Well, listeners at home, if you don't want to listen to the commercial, feel free to listen to, say it for him one more time.
It's Let the Good Times Roll by Freddie King, and it's off the album Going Down at Uncle Poe's.
Check it out or listen to the commercial, and we'll be right back. Have you ever just looked at fried carbs on a plate and thought, I need to eat those, but it doesn't taste all that appetizing? Introducing catsup. Catsup is a sugary and red syrupy paste that'll overshadow any unappreciated taste. Simply douse the unpreferred tasting object and ingest. Mmm. Thanks, catsup! Alright, and we're back. So, now that we've gotten to know you a little bit better, Eric, what is your passion? Or what are you passionate about, my man?
Yeah, so I'm actually passionate about a lot of different disparate things, but I think the common theme that ties everything together is I like doing things that are difficult. And it's something that I don't think I realized till much later in life, but I really enjoy setting like a personal goal for myself and then working towards it, either in the short term or the very long term, and pushing my boundaries, getting outside of my comfort zone, and learning and like growing on the way. That's really what like gets me up in the morning.
So is it the accomplishing of said, mountainous task, or is it the undertaking that really kind of, does it for you? Like, when are you most fulfilled during this process of such an undertaking?
For me, I guess it definitely varies in the task, but a lot of people say it's about the journey and not the destination. I don't actually feel like that applies to me very much. I really enjoy the actual moment where I like accomplish a task. And sometimes the sort of the path you have to take to get there is extremely difficult. And there's usually a lot of moments along the way that are not satisfying or pleasurable, in any sense of the word. And I think a big thing for me is I try to do things that always come across as not something I'm able to do, or it's like right outside the boundary of what I think I can do. And the reason why I choose that, like, I guess like the reason why I choose things that are sort of at that level is because it's something that's outside of my skill set or outside of my range right now, but there's a chance that I can do it if things go well, or if I catch a lucky break, or these sorts of things. And because it's something that is quote unquote impossible for me now, that I end up doing it later, like making that switch is ultimately like what I'm after. And I really enjoy the aspect of like actually being able to check something off the list, and like that's what I always like, that's what I'm after, not necessarily the journey.
So, if you aren't, have you ever been able to not accomplish something that you seek out?
Yeah, I mean, failure is part of this, right? So,
For sure. But
yeah.
when that happens, how does it, like, is that discouraging for you? Is it just, part and parcel of taking on such a Herculean task? Or, how does that make you feel when, this thing you set out for, when you're saying the ending is so much of, the enjoyment for you? How does that kind of incorporate into such a passion?
So, I know for me, one of the things that I struggled with, I guess, earlier on is like not being able to properly deal with failure of not obtaining a goal. Like it can be very hard, especially when you put a lot of effort into it, and you really like emotionally attach yourself to whatever you're doing. But as I've gotten older, I know I've gotten a lot better at accepting the notion or the fact that you're not going to be successful 100% of the time in anything that you do. And when I do fail now, it's more of an introspective and learning experience, in the sense that like, okay, I set this goal, I wasn't able to achieve it. Like, let's try and figure out why. Like, let's go back and analyze the situation, see what I could have done better, like things that I did wrong, all that sort of stuff.
So
And
when
yeah.
you do that, and you learn things and you grow as a person, do, so is there still no enjoyment in that? I mean, like obviously there's an enjoyment in, or I would imagine there's an enjoyment in growing as a person, but do you look back at that and smile, or is it kind of like um, a mountain left to be climbed? Like, do you ever return to that kind of thing, or is it I tried it, I gave it my all, came up short, shrug it off, and look to the next challenge?
I would definitely say that I'm not looking back on it with a smile, especially in the short term. Like, if I'm doing something where I failed, it's like, all right, the serious face is on. Like, let's figure out why this happened. But it's always in the context of being forward thinking. So like, even though I'm looking back and trying to like figure out what happened, I'm trying to look for things that I can use to like use as a tool in the future. And that's in service of like, one, like maybe going back to the same thing in the future and like giving it another shot, or two, just seeing if there's any other peaks I want to climb, to use the mountain analogy.
Have you gone back and tried, or planning to go back and try any of the mountains that you haven't been able to scale, so to speak?
As it stands right now, I don't have any like big plans. And I would say, the thing that I'm working on right now, which honestly feels like somewhat of an unattainable goal is, I'm trying to retire early. I don't know if you've heard of the FIRE movement. It's financial independence, retire early, and that's like, for me, like I tend to focus on one big thing at a time. It's like, okay, this is what I'm setting my sights on. I'm going after it, and that's what I'm doing right now. So that's, probably going to define the next 7 to 10 years of my life, probably. And during that period of time, unless I change my mind, like I'm probably not going to go after anything big in the sense of like the stuff that I've done in the past. But after that, like,
So what
I
are
haven't, yeah.
so what are some of the things that you've gone after in the past? If you want to, kind of regale us with your, triumphs.
Yeah. So I know for me it comes in quite a few different forms. I have a hobby outside work where I make like 3-dimensional mechanical puzzles, and I started doing that when I was pretty young, and at the time I had absolutely no skills in terms of being able to design things or engineer things, and to be able to make those, you have to know how to CAD things in 3D. So I downloaded some software, I hopped on YouTube, and I taught myself how to do that, and I taught myself how to print things and make molds and cast plastic parts so that way I could make puzzles. And that was like one of the first big things that I did, where it's just like, okay, I want to be able to manufacture my own puzzle. I need to do these 7 different things, so I have to go figure out all of them and teach myself how to do them. And that's something that I've done throughout my adult life, and that was like one of the big things.
So when
did.
when this is a bit of a child's question, but when you make puzzles like that, are you kind of, is it kind of like cheating where, the puzzle gets made and then you just kind of know how to do it because you designed it? Or have you ever made a puzzle and still kind of like, wait, I know this is solvable, or at least I'm pretty sure it is, but whoops, and then like you like kind of have to like you have to like figure it out over again, or just for the first time?
So what's really interesting is that the sort of the skill set involved in making puzzles is totally different than the skill set involved for solving puzzles. And I have designed, I don't know, something like 30 puzzles at this point. And I could say I can solve about half of them. Yeah. So, to answer your question, there's quite a few puzzles that I've made that I just don't know how to solve.
Is it possible that they aren't solvable, or are you like pretty darn certain they are?
I'm 100% certain that they are, just given the nature of the puzzle that I'm making. It's a little bit difficult to describe over audio, but I'll attempt. So imagine like a Rubik's Cube. That's the style of puzzle that I make all the time. And let's say that I give you a solved Rubik's Cube and you scramble it for me. Okay. You sit there for a few minutes, you make as many moves as you can. And you say, and you give this back to me and say, hey, can you guarantee that someone can solve this? The answer to that question is yes, because I always have the option of just reversing the order of moves that you made to scramble the puzzle, right? So like a Rubik's Cube is always going to be solvable, right? And the puzzles that I make have the same property, where it's, if you scramble it, you always have the ability to just do the exact opposite of the move order that was used to scramble it, and that will bring it back to its solved state.
Wow.
Yeah. But looking at a puzzle, like looking at a Rubik's Cube and figuring out the move order that was used to scramble it is something very few humans can do. But there are humans that can do it, which is really incredible.
So, moving on to our next segment, that passion was awesome. Now, what about your preposterous peeve?
My preposterous peeve. So I know that this is something that it's not worth my time thinking about at all, but something that that always like really just gets me is like when two people are walking in like a mostly like tight space, and one person like has to move out of the way to allow the other person to walk through or whatever, and they say sorry. It always really rubs me the wrong way, because someone is saying sorry and they have committed no fault or error or anything like that, and it just always like struck me as really strange, because there's no other way to handle the situation, right?
Yeah.
And like someone is through like some weird quirk of the human language or the human condition or the culture that we've developed.
Yeah, in our society, there's one person somehow that is at fault, even though they've done nothing wrong.
Exactly. It's like we've been put in this situation where, you know, someone has to deal with the situation, so that way both people can like literally move on with their lives, and you know, someone is saying sorry, and like I don't know, it feels strange to me that that's the culture that we've developed around it. Maybe is the right way to say it.
I want to meet the person back in time that first like required the apology. It was like walking down a hallway, and, you know, it must have been like a lord and a servant, you know, just like
well,
passing.
it's almost they're almost certainly Canadian, right?
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to take our second commercial break, and then we'll be right back for the lightning round. So stick around. Have you ever wanted to kill a small woodland creature or break a window but not had the physical strength? I know I have. Now introducing Rock. Rock comes in a variation of sizes and ready to use. Simply put Rock in your hand, raise it back to ear level, and release. See? You've got it! This ad does not condone the violence against small woodland creatures or windows, nor will it be held liable for any inability of use when coming into contact with paper. All right, thank you very much for listening to that awesome commercial. Back with Eric Virgo for the lightning round. So Eric, are you ready?
Who knows?
Well, we're about to find out. All right. Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
No.
Lions, tigers, or bears?
Lions.
What was your favorite dollar menu item?
Oh, I don't think I can name one. Hamburger. That's got to be on there, right?
It's on one of them somewhere. Caffeine or alcohol?
Caffeine.
Are hot dogs sandwiches?
Yes.
Would you rather step on a Lego shoeless or a cow pie in new shoes when you're late for a date?
Lego shoeless.
Bow ties or suspenders?
Suspenders.
What was the first R-rated movie you saw?
Titanic? No, that was PG-13. The Matrix.
Biggest celebrity crush?
Anna Kendrick.
Congratulations, you've survived the lightning round. All right, and now before we get too far, if you had one lightning round question to add, what would it be?
What was the most expensive meal you ever purchased?
I think I ordered surf and turf, which came out to about like $100.
That's an expensive meal.
What about you?
There was a French restaurant that I went to one time in Shanghai, and I spent over $100 on.
You went to
food.
Shanghai, China, and ate French food.
Well, so the really cool thing about Shanghai is that there's a bunch of expats that live there. So like people from really all over the world have moved there, and one of the very common things to do is they open up restaurants and they serve, you know, food from their home country. So you can go to
It's not just for
Shanghai.
America anymore. They do it elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, so it's like you can go to Shanghai and you can get like authentic, good food from all over the world. It's really really cool.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So, is there anything you'd like to plug? Anything, if people want to find out about your puzzles or take a look at them, take a crack at them, where could they find out information about that?
So I guess I don't really have social media or any place to really point people towards. But if you Google Eric Virgo puzzle, you'll be able to find a lot of the stuff that I've made in the past. Yeah, so it's been a
Will they
passion
be
of
able
mine.
to have the information to print it off or create it themselves or buy it from somewhere
So
or
I,
anything like
I
that? Or is it
actually
just going to be pictures?
I haven't released any of my files for people to just take and make their own version. And I stopped selling them a while ago just because it became quite frankly a lot of work, and I didn't want to spend my free time on that. So as it stands right now, it's not something that I am. Like if someone is interested in like owning a copy of a puzzle that I've made, they can't do that anymore. But yeah, they're if you have the correct skill set, you can look at the puzzles that I've made in the past and probably replicate them.
Is there a reason that you haven't put the puzzle designs like online for other people to copy?
Yeah, one reason, and it's a pretty good one, is because I actually don't have a lot of them anymore.
Oh
I was not.
no.
Yeah, I was not smart about making sure that I had proper backups of things, and I had a hard drive that had like basically all of my puzzle designs on it. Fry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
Not
back
not
before
great.
the cloud, or you just didn't trust the cloud to put it on?
This is back before the cloud. Well, I mean,
Back in the day.
actually, this is like 2015, 2016. Cloud services existed then. I just didn't use them.
Yeah, I wonder when most people started using cloud services. It's one of those things that's kind of just like slipped into popular existence.
Yeah, from what I can tell, it's not something that like society hard switched to in like a sort of binary way. People have transitioned to it over time, and we're obviously not at 100% yet. People still store things locally all the time,
Yeah.
but as the future progresses, I think it's going to be a higher percentage of how people store things.
It's kind of interesting, that idea of binary switches versus just like a slow just descent or change. Like one of the questions I had earlier was like, what movie will you never skip when channel surfing? It's like that is a thing that is going, that like people born today or born in the last little while probably aren't gonna. There's like a good chance they just won't know what that is. That like
Yeah.
idea will be kind of like lost on them. It's kind of it's kind of fascinating to see what and how quickly what is like kind of cycling out of general, like the general population, and the way it's just kind of consuming and interacting with technology and like other things.
Yeah, and the concept of it being a hard switch or a transition is really dependent on what time scale you're looking on, right? So if we're just thinking about the last, let's say, 20 years, the transition from, let's say, storing things locally to storing things in the cloud looks fairly slow, right? You're able to very easily see that curve or that switch happen and like have it progress over time. But if you zoom out and say look at the last 100 years or whatever, or 1,000 years, and you look at some other aspect of society, it looks like a hard switch. Like let's say like transportation methods, right? When the car got invented, like societies that were able to afford these sorts of things, they moved to it extremely quickly in the context of like modern human history, right? But again, that's something that took a number of years to develop. So it depends on the perspective that you have.
It's kind of interesting. I wonder what the car to like gas station ratio was early on. I think about like changes. It's like it's interesting that depending upon when there were people that like there was arguably more, like I mean there was infinitely more cars than there were gas stations at one point for sure, just because of the amount of gas station or the amount of cars that were in existence. Like why would you have if there's like 100 cars on the planet, why would anybody have a gas station? That'd be kind of pointless. It'd be like a cell phone thing or whatever at that point, most likely. It's kind of fascinating that like they would pop up to match production and like need, obviously, but there's people like driving around either just ordering gasoline or like that's a fascinating concept to kind of delve into deeper at a different time.
Yeah. I don't have a strong intuition about how the gas station industry developed with the proliferation of cars, but you have to imagine that the people who were making cars had to ensure that there was a distribution for gasoline that was able to support cars, because they were kind of worthless without it.
I mean, once Ford did it, I'm sure, but before Ford, it was predominantly like egalitarian is probably not the right word, but just like it's only for posh people at that. The kind of uber rich were the only people, because it was they were getting made like by a group of one car was taking days or months to be created by like a set of a set of people. And like it was, basically each one was kind of custom made. So at that point, kind of doubt there was gas stations, but who knows? Maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean
that would suck to work at that gas station, though. There's like two
You'd be
guys in your whole entire state that like need gas, and the rest of the time you're just like, huh, this is cool. Thanks, Dad. I love this job.
Yeah.
I'm just like sitting around.
At least you got a gig, right?
Selling rock candy to random kids in suspenders.
Yeah, so I mean, if I had to guess, I think in the extremely early days where there were just not a lot of cars on the road, it was not a sustainable business model to have a gas station, right? So sort of like what you're saying, there's just not enough customers for you. So it's very possible that you would like maybe have gas just delivered to your house, and that's where you would fill up, or wherever you stored your car. And then after enough people adopted cars, there was just enough of a need for being able to fill up on the go that gas stations came up.
Mm. I mean, it's probably actually like the electric cars, like the first couple that were being made before like Tesla came along and like made them super mainstream and stuff like that. There were like little ones here and there that were people getting them from like foreign companies and like stuff like that before like that big Tesla push. I don't think I remember, before Tesla was a company, I don't think I ever remember seeing, any charging, docks or anything like that. And anything place reasonable is probably just people charging at home and then driving back and making sure they got home and charged them again. Obviously, it's, that's a different kind of thing, but it's the same kind of idea.
Oh no,
like,
it's very similar. It's extremely similar. I think I tend to agree with you where like I wouldn't see charging stations at most like public spaces, but something that was fairly common was like charging points at work for large corporations. So like people would drive their electric car into work, and then they would just hook it up to a charging station while they were at work. Yeah.
Dollars to Donut says the boss had an electric car and that's why they had him. He's just
I mean, that's
we
that's
totally need
likely.
these for our employees. And they're like, where would you like it? Where my parking spot is, please. Driving up.
Well, yeah, I mean, also, like, in the earlier days of electric cars, they tended to be a lot more expensive than, like, gasoline-powered cars. So, you also need enough money to be able to pay for it. So, yeah, I mean, there's a good chance that the people who were owning electric cars in the earlier days were not low-level employees.
And on that bizarre note, I believe this is a great place to end our proliferating pontification.
That was awesome alliteration.
Well, I've got one better for you. This is the end of the first episode of Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. My first guest has been Eric Virgo. Say goodbye, Eric.
Goodbye, everyone. Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure. And everybody out there, thank you for listening to the first episode. And remember, be kind to yourself, love your neighbor, and be understanding. Have a good day.